Welcome to the Hope After Narcissistic Abuse podcast. I am your host, Amy Helms. Each week, you will hear from experts across the country and even world speak to you on recovering from narcissistic abuse and even how to manage these relationships. You will also hear some periodic solo episodes on how to manage these relationships and what recovery is like. It is my hope that you will leave each episode with some renewed hope that you can and will beat this. Thank you for tuning in. Hello, welcome back. I'm so excited today to welcome Abigail Luvisi. Abigail is an imposter syndrome coach and offers many different things that she will tell you about throughout this episode. Welcome, Abigail.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
First, what is an imposter syndrome coach?
So, I think a lot of us, have the stories that go on in our head about needing to be perfect or, that I can't do it, or other people have qualifications that I don't have in their business or in life. And so I really get to the core of what's going on with that. And we help you find your truth and what you need to be able to move forward in your life and business that you desire.
Yeah, and I've thrown out the term, like, I feel like an imposter syndrome frequently. When I first left my ex-husband on a month when I actually made money or did something right, it's like I feel like such an imposter. But how would you define even the term imposter syndrome?
Well, I've played around with the word a few times. I actually was started out as a shame resilience mentor and then changed it because I think people get afraid of the word shame.
Yeah.
So I've kind of shifted a few times. And a lot of times I noticed that people didn't even know the difference between guilt and shame.
I don't think people do. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't. And so guilt, just to say to your audience, guilt is I made a mistake, and shame is messages of I am the mistake. And so, when we're having these stories of imposter syndrome, I kind of was noticing like people are more comfortable with using that word, right? Like, oh, I feel an imposter. It's very much in business. And again, I was gearing more to the pain point originally, like shame, but because I was noticing people didn't know the difference, that it was hard to talk to people. And so I realized, oh, people really connect with imposter syndrome. I'm going to go that way, right? Because at the end of the day, even in our business, it's 80% mindset. So I was like, people aren't as afraid to talk about business.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, you know what I mean? Like, again, to me, I was like, it all encompasses business, life, they go together, but people like to think they don't. And so they put it aside. And so that's why I kind of decided to use this imposter syndrome, because at the end of the day, we can get to what they need when I show up that way. Does that make sense?
100%. And it's even not even just business. It's things like being a mom, being a
Oh, yeah.
friend.
Hmm.
I'm not going to be good enough. Or if we do the mom comparison, how can I keep up with someone that always does the homemade treats or is on every committee, does everything? And, you know, I could never do that. That's kind of the same line.
Right. Well, in those stories, right? So I was taught, and what I use as my model as well now, is they're called the shame shadows. So even those right there, those few things that you pointed out are, so what, tell me again, like a couple that you just said, like, I can't keep up with that, right? Is that what I heard you
Right.
say? Right. So
Yeah.
that would be the politician. So the politician is, I can do this to earn points for people to like me. So that mom that feels like, oh, I'm bringing in all the cookies or I'm bringing in all the things, my shame is telling me I can earn points for the teacher, for friends to like me. But that's not really us, right? That's our beliefs about ourselves. And so when we're able to see the shadows that are coming up and these beliefs that aren't really us, and we can get to the truth of what we need, we're able to shift it.
So, what's an example of that you've worked with the truth of what we really need?
Well, our needs are different for everybody
Yeah.
because we have attachment wounds that are different. So there's also 6 different attachment wounds I work with, which is abuse, betrayal, neglect. Oh my gosh, blanking. Abuse, neglect, betrayal, rejection, and there's a couple others. But when we're able to find those attachment wounds for you, we're able to see what the beliefs are that you made about yourself. Because usually, when an attachment wound is hit, we go straight into the belief about ourselves. We pass the emotion. And so, when we pass the emotion, we can't slow down and go, oh, this wound got hit for me. I'm feeling sad. We go right into shame and we start telling ourselves this. So, again, trauma happened to us, but it's really the beliefs about the trauma that we created about ourselves that keep going, right? Like as kids, we're egocentric, right? Like when something happened to us, we can't look and go, oh, that teacher messed up, or that friend that said that to me is hurting, right? We just go, oh, what's wrong with me? So we take it on ourselves. So as we get older and these things, our brain starts to look for evidence to say that that's true. For adults, and our brain and body aren't connecting. And so how can we shift that? Okay, well, if I can go, for example, my biggest attachment wound is rejection. So when my imposter syndrome is coming up, like I'm usually telling the judge is coming up. So the judge is, I'm not enough. It demands perfection. And then the politician comes in and says, right, I can earn points for you to like me. So
Mhm.
if I'm sitting here even right now, right, if I feel like I need to look a certain way, oh, I can't have my room needs to be perfect, or I need to say the right thing because I need everybody to connect with me. And then my judge comes in like, you got to be perfect. Like you're really not enough. And then the impotent one is another shadow that comes in and is like, nothing's ever going to change, all or nothing language, black and white thinking. And so those are big ones for imposter syndrome. So if I'm able to see them and go, whoa, 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 really, those shadows are coming up, but really I felt the fear of rejection. I'm really like my rejection wound got hit. I'm really afraid that you're not going to like me, or I'm really afraid that this isn't going to work out. And when I'm able to see the fear, I can go, okay, what do I need? Right? What's the truth? The truth is I am worthy and whole no matter what you think of me. Right? That's the truth. But then I can ask for what I need. Okay, did this podcast go okay afterward? Right? Like I can get my need met. Sure, I could let the imposter syndrome come back in and push you away, but really I want connection. So
Mhm.
I can ask for my needs to get met, or I can afterward call my best friend or my husband and go, hey, I just felt like I totally bombed this. All my shadows are coming out. I feel like I totally screwed this up. Can you tell me that you love me and that I didn't mess that up? And then I got my connection.
Yeah, the connection and validation and
Hmm.
social is what we really need, just to be connected to each other.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're built for, is
Mhm.
connection. But when all of our attachment wounds are getting hit and our beliefs, they're pushing us away, right? Like we can live, like it's, for example, it's like a sunburn. Like I can go to the beach all day, have the best time of my life, and I can get a sunburn. And in the morning, as I'm getting ready to go to work, like I'm putting on my clothes and it hurts, right? I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm good. Nobody touched me. So I'm walking around when I go to work and I'm like, nobody touch me, right? But nobody knows I have a sunburn. I just know that I have this sunburn. And then, somebody comes up and is like, hey, and they hit me and I'm like, ah, or like push them, right? Get off of me. That's our attachment wounds. That's what happens. Nobody knows that I have a rejection wound or a betrayal wound or an abandonment wound. But if it gets hit, then I react and I project my beliefs and what I'm seeing out. But if I can be aware of them and see that my shadows come up, I could go, whoa, I just got hit, and like I need to take care of myself, or be like, hey, like this happened, like I need a second, I need 10, whatever, right? We can get our need met.
Right. And these are the wounds that are additive, that as we get told we're not good enough or something, they build over time. And if you're in a relationship for a long time or you have child on top of it, it
Hmm.
builds and builds and builds, and the wounds grow, right?
Well, we're looking to seek what we
Mhm.
already believe about ourselves. So our brain
Mhm.
doesn't know how to stop looking for it. It's subconscious. It's I'm not enough, so I'm seeking out to show that I'm not enough, even though
Mhm.
I don't want to feel that way. But again, it's because of that stuff that happened that now I'm looking for evidence to believe that.
It's just what
So,
we know feels comfortable in a way. And then if
right.
we find something that's contrary, it feels weird and odd. And oh, I don't like this.
Yeah. Well, I say to my clients all the time two things: you don't know what you don't know, and you get to choose what uncomfortable you want to be in. Because
Mhm.
if we're hurting and we don't like what's happening, we're uncomfortable, but it's just what we know. So if we want to shift and we can see the things that are happening that we don't want anymore, well, I get to choose to be in that uncomfortable. So which uncomfortable do you want to be in? It's your choice.
Mhm. I love that. And I know after, years of, my marriage and then leaving and experiencing, so much emotional and, mental and well, all kinds of abuse that, you know, my attachment wounds were huge, but I continued that narrative in my head. And it was the attempts to get it from other people and other sources. And, it was exhausting because I was that
Mm,
person that was making, you know, individual Hello Kitty cupcakes that were hand piped, and each one was wearing a different dress because I thought, well, if I can do something special, maybe it will please someone because I could never
mm,
please anyone before. And so it was
right.
little crazy things I was just wearing myself out doing, but no one saw it. I mean, the kids were 4.
Right. Well, and really what I kind of hear, tell me if I'm wrong, what I hear us needing is when we can see our attachment wound, that attachment wound is usually what we need, right? So if I'm, I'm using me for example in your situation. So if I'm for me, right, because my story is different than yours. If I'm hand piping these things and I want my kids to notice them and I really don't want to do it, by doing it, I'm actually rejecting myself. I don't want to do it, right? Like my attachment wound is rejection. So, or I might be betraying myself. I really just want to rest, right? I'm so tired. I don't want to be the perfect mom. Like, what is this story that I'm telling myself I need to be perfect? When really,
It was
I need it for
repeating
me.
my
Yeah.
narrative that I had become so uncomfortable in, but that's what only thing I knew.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, what you're saying, like, again, I know we talked a little bit before this too. I can totally relate to that. It is being with my ex who has NPD, like that was in the narrative for me too, like even now, right? Like that's why I think I can write our greatest strengths are our greatest weakness, right? So that's why I can talk so much on it and I love to talk so much on it is because I didn't know what I didn't know and now I know what I do. And so I can build from that and be confident in that even though there are many days still that I'm like, am I crazy? Right? Because that is built so much into me that I was the crazy one, that I didn't know what I was talking about, that I couldn't trust myself. And so now having to constantly go back and go, this is what's getting hit for me. What do I need? And how can I come back to my truth?
And eventually, when you recognize that truth and you just say, no, I'm not doing that,
Yeah. Yep.
it becomes a good feeling.
Yeah. Just like you said, it feels really uncomfortable in the beginning. And you really question yourself when you're doing it. You're like, oh, this feels off. Am I making the right decision? And that's why community is so important too. Because when I'm able to have a space of like-minded people with whatever that is, and that's why I really value my groups, is because when we're able to claim the stories that are happening to us and share it in an environment that's safe, that's when we can change the story. But if I'm trying to change the story alone, like again, that means I'm still alone in my head.
And you're still rejecting yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. And it can be very easy for me to, again, like get to a place where it's like, oh, did I really do that? Well, but if I'm able to reach out to a community and go, hey, this is what I did. This was my process. I saw what was getting hit. I know this is my core belief about myself. This is the decision I'm making and what I need. Do you hear something different than me? Right? Like, then I'm able to communicate and figure out, like, oh, yeah, that's really what's happening. That's what's getting hit. And I can stand more firm in that new truth about myself.
Mm-hmm. So you talked a little bit about how you got into this work. Do you mind sharing, like, what made you decide to help others and figure out their truths?
Yeah, I think I think my whole life I have really just loved connection with people, which again I think goes to my neglect wound, just wanting that connection. As I went from being in a home that was neglectful, and then I went and got into a marriage that was neglectful. And I think, I didn't see it. I was really young. And looking back now, I can see that I was just looking for someone to fulfill that hole, right? I was searching for it. Like I said, like I'm just seeking out the same things I was taught. And so getting into that, I would like overshare. So I think a lot of people on their healing journey can relate to what I'm saying when I say that. Like I used to overshare everything to like try to grasp for connection. Whereas now I'm like really careful about what I share because I've realized that my story is important and you need to earn my story. Right. So there's certain things I'll share about my story. And then there's things that, the deep things that I won't share. And it doesn't mean that I don't care. It just means that there are some things that are sacred, right?
Mm-hmm.
To me.
It's
But
like
I
that
think
trauma dumping only goes to some people and not on the
right.
first conversation.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to trauma bond, right, to
Yeah.
people. Like, because I think that that's really what it was. Is I was that's literally what it was. Is I was dumping, looking and seeking for connection, and that wasn't the way to do it. And so when I, was able to learn boundaries, I will say forever that boundaries are what got my divorce. Like, period. I started a group. My ex-husband is a sex addict, and we started going to a group of sex addicts and wives of betrayal. And I had never learned boundaries. Like I had no idea. Like I'm serious. I was like, what? And so it was this whole new world. And so as I started upsetting boundaries, like he started, literally it was like every other day, like I'm gonna divorce you, right? So the trauma was just like, oh my
Did
gosh,
he
it was
like
like,
lose his shit as he started boundaries?
what was that?
Did he like lose his shit as he started boundaries?
Oh yeah, you know what I mean? Again, like that's all he could hang over me. Like he had everything to control, financial, right? Like I mean, we were living with friends at the time because oh my gosh, because he so left and I got an apartment. It's like all coming to me. He left and we got an apartment, and I got an apartment myself, and he wasn't even going to give me the money. We were going to sell the house and he refused to give me half of the money. So he had to go to a lawyer, had to tell him like, no, you legally have to give her money. I didn't have a high school diploma. Like I had been a mom literally since I met him. And I got myself an apartment, got back with him. So this was kind of before we went to this group. Okay. So I'm kind of like leading you up. Got back with him. He left again. I went and got myself in another apartment, like with no money, that once again a lawyer told him he had to give me money. And so I got myself into another apartment, again allowed him back in. We started going to this group, and that's when I was like, oh my gosh, like I had never heard really, like, I mean, again, this was almost 9 years ago. So the word narcissist, right, like was very like not as big as it is now, right? I think social media and all.
It was not a buzzword.
Yeah, it wasn't a buzzword 9 years ago. You know what I mean? Like I really didn't even know what that word was 9 years ago. Truly, I had no idea. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't, or sex addiction, right? Like I had no clue. And then I went into this group with these people that were talking and had verbiage to what I was doing. Again, just showing I just want to side note showing how important community is, right? I was with all these people that were saying things, and I was like, oh my God, all you people know what I'm talking about. Like, you feel me? Like, you get me? Like, I'm not crazy. Like, I had felt so crazy. And so once I was able to start putting these boundaries in place and going like, no, you can't talk to me this way. I'm not going to allow the gaslighting and the love bombing and the manipulation. And when I would put up these walls, right, these boundaries to keep us in place, he like kept dangling divorce. That was all he had. And then he finally did it. And I was like, all right. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. And then from there to, I'm going to set up a course on this. What was
Oh,
that
yeah.
process?
I'm like, oh yeah, where were we? You just start talking, you know what I mean? But yeah, so in one of the times I was in therapy, so yeah, again, the story is all coming to me, your question now. So there was like one time I got into therapy when I found out about like the pornography and masturbation in the beginning of my ex-husband and our marriage. And I was going to therapy because, again, he didn't have a problem. So I went because I was the problem, right? That core belief that it's really me.
Mm-hmm.
And I started going, and the therapist said to me, whatever anybody's beliefs are religiously, but she came in and said, I just wanted to let you know that God told me that if that you'd be a good therapist if you wanted to be one. And you know what I mean? I was super young at the time. And I was like, no, that's funny, right? Like, I'm like, I'm not here to be anything other than a good wife, right? Like, that's all in my mind I was at. And then there was like little nuggets that kept happening, right? Again, like I said, I just naturally talk to people. I've, been told a lot now that in my healing that my gift is my presence. And that I've also been told a gift of mine is that I meet people where they're at, right? And so I've been told these things. And then over time, it was like, gosh, I really do want to work with people. But again, that imposter syndrome that was coming in of saying, no, you don't have the right qualifications. No, you're really not enough, right? These people know more than you. And I was like, no, again, like this is shame. And so that's why I was like, the more I was able to heal my own stories and my own beliefs, I was able to see, no, I really want to help others in that. And I went to a business retreat. I was so in fear, honestly, because of the abuse I had gone through with my marriage that's why I didn't do anything for a long time. I started a beauty business during my divorce to help me, and that kind of like blew up again because I am a people person. My beauty business blew up, and it wasn't like what I wanted to do. It just helped me. I was, like I said, I didn't have a degree. I was working at a coffee shop for years when I got my divorce, and it kind of fell in my lap and I did it, but I really wanted to work with people. And I was hearing all the time, right? Even with my lash clients, like, you should be a therapist, right? This is like a therapy session, like constantly to me, but I never really wanted to go to school. I don't really like school. I love learning, but I don't like the school system. There's a lot of things that bother me, and I don't know what that is around that. I don't have the time to think about it anyways, because I got young kids. So I'm going this direction. But I just really realized how much my stuff could help others too. And I've been told, that to mentor or to coach or even to just be there to listen, you only need to be one step ahead of the person that you're helping. I mean, obviously, if they want it, right? Like, I'm not going to go like project myself onto everybody, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what led me here. So I went to a business retreat, and oh yeah, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let fear hold me anymore. And I finally opened up my Instagram. I was terrified to open up my Instagram because I felt like anything would be used against me from, my ex-husband. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not going to let fear hold me anymore. I can't, because that's not my truth. Like, I know who I am and my worth, and I'm not going to allow this to hinder me or the people that I know. Like, I'm ultimately taking away from others as well by not sharing my gifts.
Yeah. Oh, even social media. We were living in that state of fear because I shared something, it was on Facebook, and I know I'm aging myself right now too, but I shared some post during Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It was a stat. And then I went to one of the 2 times I had to have a court ordered eval, and printout was handed to me, and I was like, what's this about? It's like, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I'm like, well, what are you insinuating here? And I just repeated back whatever the stuff was. Like, I get it, but dude, sometimes you have to get over that fear and just jump right through. But
Yes. So you said somebody commented back to you that was kind of
I
like,
don't know, I just shared one of the stats that kind of floats around every October, and I shared the
mhm.
post, and I guess it was printed, and then the court ordered psychologist pulled it up to me and said, what's this about? And
Oh, geez.
it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And, well, what are you trying to insinuate here? That it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. Ugh.
I get it. I mean, but I've learned the same, just you just have to jump over that fear and get over. And at some point realize, if you have this passion, just go for it.
Right. Well, and again, the more I can recognize my attachment wounds that are coming up and my core emotion that's coming up, because that's really the part I want to get to, right? Is that there's this pain, but on the other side of pain is peace. So if I'm
Mhm.
able to see the attachment wound immediately before hitting the shame, right? And go, oh, I'm really sad. Like my wound got hit. I'm really feeling fear. I'm really feeling sad. I'm really feeling angry. But again, it's like 15 to 20 seconds it takes from us to go from the wound to shame. So we pass over the emotion. But if I was able to recognize it, right? So the more I'm able to recognize the emotion going on, I'm able to slow down and stop the shadows and just heal what needs to be there and immediately find peace.
And then sometimes purpose.
And sometimes purpose. Sorry, it's kind of hard to hear. Yeah.
Purpose. We find the purpose after
Right. Yeah.
the peace, and then purpose.
Yes, exactly. Because again, if the attachment wound is getting hit and because my betrayal wound got hit, that I feel like somebody's betraying me, or then I can immediately go, oh, I'm feeling sad, or the betrayal's there and I get angry. Oh, well, what boundary do I need to create? I'm able to start recognizing. But most people don't even, again, know what they're feeling in a moment, right? Like I'll ask my clients, we start out literally our session with, how are you feeling emotionally, physically, spiritually, and relationally? And when we start out, a lot of people are like, will sit there or they'll say, oh, it's been a hard week. Like, oh, this month has been okay. Right. Well, good and fine and okay are not feelings, for one. And two, I don't want to know how you're feeling for the week. I want to know how you're feeling in this present moment. But again, like, it just shows how disconnected we are, right? And when we're that disconnected, and instead of going from the wound to what we need and feel, we jump it. So we go from the wound to shame, and then we numb, and then we go to the mutated emotion, which is hopelessness, resentment, bitterness, shame, right? So then we're all the way out here, when really, if we could just go to the middle, it met right away. But again, we don't know what we don't know, right? So until we can,
Right. I work with eating disorders a lot. And so I hear, how are you feeling? That.
yeah,
Okay, well, that's not a feeling. How are you feeling? I don't know. And so it's these, body descriptions that I often hear instead of the fine. Or if I get to fine, well, what level of fine? Is that your, crappy fine? Is it your shitty fine? Or what degree of your fine is it?
yes, I feel like, there's things in life where they're like, oh yeah, my parents did this and it always bothered. I feel like my kids someday are going to be like, I hated when my mom said fine wasn't a feeling. Like, that's what I say to my kids all the time. So I'm like, how was school? Fine. Fine's not a feeling. How are you feeling? Fine. Fine's not a feeling.
I think I'm good on that one because my son will literally tell me, Mom, you're frustrating me right now.
Yep. Yep. I
So
love
I'm
that.
like, well, at least you used a feeling word.
Yes, exactly. How am I frustrating you? Let's talk about it. What's coming up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's great. So how do you get your clients into from the fine, good, okay, into tapping into the emotions?
Well, again, like I said, that takes practice, right? All of it is just recognizing, right? I threw a ton out here to you, but really we got to start from the beginning, which again, I think is just really connecting, right? Our logic and body say different things. So the more, like I said, I can connect with the body, we can start to work towards that. So that's why we check in emotionally. So, I immediately, what I do with my clients is we go over and find out what their values are. And values can change, but right now, what are your values? And then we start going over your emotions and we practice emotions over and over again. Some people, again, it's just at the beginning of session. I encourage people that are just listening who aren't working with me, if you want, like, set a timer, make it easy for yourself. I don't know, set a timer 10 times a day and just check in with yourself emotionally, physically, relationally, and spiritually. When you go get a drink, check in. Or if you're at a stop sign, right? Like, whatever is for you. For all of my imposter syndromes out there who want perfection, there's not a perfect way to do this. Just do it. Just start checking in with yourself so you can start noticing. We're just being curious, right? But until we can start being curious and seeing what's going on, we can't get to the other things. So I know we talked about all the other things, but until I can even recognize what sadness is for me or what anger is for me, it's going to be really hard to see all the other things.
Right. This is one of those things we have to be careful giving instructions because for imposter syndrome that's associated with like perfectionism, we don't want someone to feel like I've got to do this right or she's not going to be pleased with me. So I've got to get it down to the second.
Right. Well, and that's usually, again, those three that are coming up of the three shame shadows that are the impotent one, which is all or nothing language, black or white thinking. There's no gray, which is what I just heard, right? And then the politician, I want her to like me. I have to be the best student, right? And then
Yeah.
the judge comes in and just is like, oh, yeah, you really suck. You didn't do this right. You're not enough. Something's wrong with you, right? Like, and that's just not true, which I know we've talked a lot about those three, which are usually go hand in hand with imposter syndrome. But just to kind of tell you the other three real quick is the rebel, the royal, and the martyr. So the martyr is usually, most people know what a martyr is, I have to lay down everything or sacrifice myself. So obviously I think I deal with that one a lot in business too, or just people in general, moms, right? Like, I need to do everything so that they love me and like me, right? Like, but then I get upset and I can become passive aggressive. And then there's the rebel, which the rebel and royal hold hands a lot with like addicts, because the royal says like, or sorry, the rebel is like, F you. Like, I don't care who I hurt, what happens in the process, I'm going to do what I want. And then the royal is very entitled. So, very judgmental, puts people down to put yourself above others. So you can kind of like, I don't know if you can relate to any of those. I obviously see them in my life all the time and I talk to them. What's coming up for me? Oh, what shame shadow it is? What's really the wound that's getting hit? But again, like I said, until I can even notice how I'm feeling, well, then I can't know why these things are happening. So that's how I start first, is we got to get to you even recognizing what's happening with you. Obviously, different clients could be somewhere else, right? They might have had a lot of healing for themselves. So then we'll go right into, okay, what attachment wounds are getting hit and what's the core belief around it so we can start moving forward. Every client is going to be different, right? And what their needs are.
Exactly. Do you find different attachment wounds to be associated with different traumas or different experiences?
Oh, 100%. That's, we can have all of them, right? It's just which one is getting hit for you the most, we can really want to get to. So again, obviously different situations, they're going to be hit differently. Well, if my husband cheats on me, what's really coming up for me? You know, like I could easily say it's my betrayal wound, but underneath it for me, again, going back to it's my rejection wound, because ultimately my core belief about myself is I'm defective. So that's
Yeah,
me.
like he wouldn't have cheated on me if I hadn't been better, good enough, etc.
Yeah, but everybody's is different. That's the thing, is everybody needs to find is unique in their own way, and nothing's wrong with you. Like everybody's, it's okay. Like we just need to figure out what it is that you're needing to help you be successful and find the most peace in your life.
That's great. So we talked a little bit about before we hit record, but what do you offer for people that want to explore this more in depth? You mentioned some like an Instagram Live and some one-on-one and some programs, but do you mind sharing a little bit about it?
Yeah. So right now, I did say I have a podcast too. So my podcast is called Judgment Free Zone. I did season 1, and so I'm kind of like working on season 2 right now. So what that it looks like is I'm offering a free call with me, but it's on an Instagram Live, and I'm calling it Mindset Shift Wednesday. So we basically go over a core belief that you're struggling with, and we figure out again what you're needing in that. So we usually have, we have 3 genres of core beliefs. I'll just touch on that real quick. Is the I am, the trust, and the powerless. So I am are statements like, again, I'm not enough, I'm defective, I'm not worthy. The trust is I can't trust myself or I can't trust others. And powerless is I can't do anything about it, right? Like there's nothing I can do. I can't change my situation. So when we have any of these core beliefs or all three can be very debilitating and not helpful to us. So, you know, if we go in and we can figure out what your core belief is that you want to work on, we go through it on an Instagram Live, and then I'm going to put it on my podcast. So that's a free session you get with me. I just get to post it. And it's helpful for other people too, especially business owners, because one, they're getting to see and work on themselves. And then I'm giving it as the opportunity you get to share, right, what you do so that others can come find you too. So it's like a collaboration. So that's kind of like my free thing I'm doing right now. I also do one-on-one so we can work individually, but I really think the sweet spot is groups. And I say that because, again, we're built for connection. And once we're able to get out and show what is holding us and be able to be in a community to move forward, that's really where the magic happens. So I love meeting one-on-one. I will take you and we will work together. A lot of my women do group and then find that, oh, I want to get deeper. So that's where we get into one-on-one. But they're like, no, I don't want to stop group, because it is so beautiful. And I think it's so beautiful too, just because I think it's sweet for me, because that's like where I really started. Like I was in a group, and I just think it's so special.
And it's so important for that social engagement too.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so how can people find that to sign up?
Yeah, so I mean, I show up a lot on my Instagram, so you can find me at Abigail LaVC, and then my Facebook also Abigail LaVC, and my podcast Judgment Free Zone, and then my website also is AbigailLaVC.com. I make it super easy for you. It's just all my name.
Yeah, now that will be linked in the show notes as well, the website and the social media. Any final words?
No, I don't think so. Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate the time to share, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you so much, and please tune in to the next episode.
Thank you again for tuning in to our podcast, Hope After Narcissistic Abuse. We hope you were able to leave with some renewed hope. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe to the channel, give us a review, head to the show notes for more information on the things that we highlighted. And there's also a link to the website for a course that we offer on the same topic, Hope After Narcissistic Abuse. Thank you again, and please tune in to the next episode.